Yasmarit Pundarikaksham Subhaya Abhyantara Shuchi Shri Vishnu Shri Vishnu Shri Vishnu. Again. Yes, we purify ourselves with water, and even Arjuna did this when he was going to shoot a Brahmastra. Om Apavitra Pavitro Va Sarvavastam Kutopi Va Yasmarit Pundarikaksham Savaya Avyantara Shuchi Shri Vishnu Shri Vishnu Shri Vishnu. It must be very important, because you can just imagine this nuclear bomb is blowing up not only this planet but other planets, but he still has enough time to do Achman. Om Apavitra Pavitro Va Sarvavastam Gatopi Va Yasmarit Pundarikaksham Sabhaya Abhyantara Shuchi Shri Vishnu Shri Vishnu Shri Vishnu. One more time. Sometimes I lose track of things, which comes 3 times. When did we start? When did we end? But it's always good to play it safe. And the translation is, and it starts with Om. Every starts Pranava, Omkar. This is Vedic mantra. It's a mantra that's relevant for us, particularly because it establishes that prior disqualification or prior impropriety does not affect the future. Therefore, there's Shastric injunction that it is an offense to consider a Vaishnava's past. What was a Vaishnava in the past? Anyway, the mantra says, and I'll come back to that, whether one is purified or an unpurified, he's in a Brahminical or a non-Brahminical culture, whatever type of situation one's gone through, by remembering, and that's the key, by remembering Krishna, then one becomes supremely pure. So Vaishnava Jati Buddhi, Arche Vishnu Shiradi Gurumati Vaishnava Jati Buddhi, this concept of what was someone in the past. The past is irrelevant unless one succumbs to the influence of the past. So, Ramaharshan Sutta was a Sutta. Sutta means low class, it means non-Brahminical, it's a very sort of low down in the cultural rung of Vaishnava society. Still, he became the Acharya of the Puranas by dint of his knowledge. However, when he lost sight, now what's the purpose of the Puranas, which is Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Balaram came, and when Balaram appeared, you can imagine, what would we do if Lord Balaram comes walking down the hall over here? Anyway, you could just imagine, what would you think if I just kept sitting here? I just kept saying, well, I'm giving the Bhagavatam class, so I don't have to get up for Lord Balaram. And here are, aside from that, thousands of other sages who also know better. So then Lord Balaram said, now his past has caught up with him. Somehow or another, and we don't have any history of that, maybe acharyas have made comment, but he became fallen. So, you become the most fallen is when you can't recognize the Supreme Lord and offer respect for him. Then that's the bottom of the pile, along with the same thing happening when we don't respect Vaishnavas. But Balaram is not just the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he's Guru. And there were two Gurus in our line, primarily through whom we our Guru Varga or our Guru disciple succession descends, and one is from Lord Balaram, or more specifically Lord Nityananda, and the other one is from Srimati Radharani. And whether Srimati Radharani actually ever gives initiation, I've never read any such thing. They're gopas, so it's not really their business to be doing that. For that matter, we don't have any record of Lord Balaram giving initiation either. But still, he's the Guru. He's the original Guru. And so, one is you don't respect the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the other is you don't respect the spiritual master. So if we had time and we were talking about the 10 offenses, which is one thing that, against the holy name, which is one thing that we talk about at the time of initiation, how to avoid the 10 offenses, then one is Gurur Avagya. Now it could say other things. It refers to, first is such, sadhu nindam namnam aparadam vitanuti yatakyatam yatakyatam utahati tadvigaraham. Then second one, Shiva Vishnur Gurupati, and so on. And the third one is Guru Vagya. And then Shruti Shastra Nindanam. So you can see in the beginning, the first one is sadhu ninda, to disrespect Vaishnavas. To disrespect Vaishnavas Guru is also falls in that category. But then it's given special emphasis by being repeated again. And what's being raised here, standing up for Lord Balaram, receiving Lord Balaram, is really symbolic. But it's symbolic of what? Of Agya. Agya. Agya means the order. This word Agya is very, very strong word. It's a very powerful word. We don't come across it many times in Shastra. We come across different words. Prabhupada uses the word Vani, is to follow the instruction, which are lighter words, which usually refer to things like advice or guidance, spiritual guidance. Of course, Prabhupada's use of the spiritual world, master, is a very heavy word, because masters don't just give advice. So they don't just give guidance. They are also teachers. It's not in my time, because that was in Canada, but in England, if you look at like Dickens, you know Dickens, Charles Dickens. Anyway, at least from the historical point of view, you're chewing your nails in the temple room. they addressed teachers then as master. Teacher was addressed as master, yes master. I don't know how long that was current, but it indicates a very strong relationship, a very demanding relationship, and agya. We have this agya, amara agya guru. Of all people, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says, now I'm giving you this order. So order is something that Guru, you can't, you have no alternative. If you don't follow order, then you become someone outcast. Literally speaking, you become outcast from Brahmin society, Vaishnav society. So this is really one of the main messages of the symbolism of not standing up to receive Guru. All right, you show respect, and generally that's the first thing that people do. We see devotees can bow down, they can give jais, but then to follow an instruction, that becomes a different issue. And order you really give when people can't hear. And sometimes the concept of order looks like this is spoken with a raised voice, so that everyone's attention is there and things become sort of embedded in the mind and the heart. So Guru Vagya, to ignore that order. And the order may be veiled. Lord Balaram is not coming dressed as Lord Narayan. He's still coming as a cowherd. So it may not be just immediately obvious what the instruction is. Krishna tends to be sort of more detached. Do whatever you want to do. And Prabhupada sometimes would say that, oh Prabhupada, they don't want to listen to our advice, then let them go to hell. So if that's what people want, and if they're so silly that they ignore Lord Chaitanya's message, then let them live with the consequences. Ultimately, what can we do? Our business is that we offer something. But that offer is like agya. Lalita Vishaka Saki Jata Saki Vrinda Agya Ya Koriba Seva Charanara Vrinda. So this agya comes up again. Narottam Das Thakur comes up in the spiritual world, and it's indicative that unless one actually understands this principle of following, you have no access to the spiritual world. Because when they give an order simply by gestures. And you have to be able to read it. Just they do like this, or you read a lot about glancing out of the corner of the eyes. Unless we're practiced here, and siddhasya lakshanam tatsat sadhanam sadakasya chat. This principle of learning how to follow here qualifies us to actually be real followers there. And the whole principle is there to be a follower. So if explicit words we have difficulty following here, then not explicit or hidden, veiled instructions will have difficulty following there. And in spiritual world, there's only room for followers. There's no room for rebels. There's no everyone's already learned how to fall in line and do everything really properly. Avagya. So this concept of rejecting that order. And I guess I'm emphasizing on this thing. I have lots of practical experience, and that instruction doesn't always have to be. It's not good. It's not good for your blood pressure. It's not good for your nervous system. It's not good. It's not good teaching to always have to have a raised voice, and therefore ultimately human beings want to be able to just say something, and that's enough, and that's agya. That becomes an order, and that the devotees can understand that. So being able to therefore pick up on something, just because it's said in passing, doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't have strong import. And being a follower, dasa das anudas, kopi bhakta padakamyo das. And being a follower means, how well do I pick up on instructions? And even spiritual master may forget. Krishna doesn't forget. Krishna will keep track, and he'll keep track record. Okay, he follows 60%, she follows 90%, they follow. And Krishna wants it, because ultimately, if you can't follow them, you can't follow me. Because following Vaishnavas is a lot easier than following Krishna. Krishna becomes a lot more demanding, and it becomes a lot more particular. Everything has to be just right. You notice Krishna, this planet is going about in orbit, and it's perfectly aligned. Krishna likes when people do things right. Krishna is not sloppy. If he was a sloppy creator, we wouldn't be here. And then maybe we'd have a dog's leg sticking out of your head, and you have a cat's nose, and it doesn't work like that. Krishna is very perfect in everything that he does. And if you want to follow him, you also have to try to be perfect. Whether we're perfect or not is, in the material world, it's not possible. But ultimately in the spiritual world it is. Because there you become empowered to do that if you want to be. But if our mentality is sloppy, avagya, then the mentality would be sloppy there, although there's no question of being sloppy there, because you don't get there to be sloppy in the first place. So it's a real art, it's a real science, and it's something that devotees need to think well, because it's like a race. The clock starts ticking as soon as they shoot the gun, and that's it. So initiation means they shoot the gun, and then the clock starts ticking, and Krishna starts counting. And our tradition is a very interesting tradition in terms of guru-disciple relationship. The general relationship often seems like that of a teacher and disciple, and the teaching seems to be just relegated to a certain period of time in Gurukula, and then it becomes sort of inactive, or more of a passive relationship. In terms of Vaishnava culture, whether we read of Madhvacharya's line or Ramanujacharya's line, of course in our line, the commitment becomes a lifelong commitment, lifelong interaction, and then we read of so many men, and then even indeed women, who then sort of dedicate their lives, well, just in the way that you're all doing, to Srila Prabhupada's mission, to then Ramanuja's mission, Madhvacharya's mission. And then in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, it has particular meaning, specific meaning, and even more so with Srila Prabhupada. When Srila Prabhupada even criticized his godbrothers and for taking lightly the order of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, not the order, the orders, and particularly the multiple orders in general that they received to preach, and specifically the orders that they received individually. And very interestingly, even Prabhupada's godbrother said, Swamiji was not the only one to receive the instruction. In other words, Prabhupada instructed other disciples, even more senior disciples, to do what Prabhupada did. The only problem is Prabhupada was the only one who did it, and the other ones didn't do it. And Srila Prabhupada refers to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, which means that it also goes back to that time, to the Bhagavad Gita verse, Eke Hakuruna. No, what is the verse? Vyavasyapika buddhir eke hakurunandana. And sometimes good to refer to that verse where Bhaktisiddhanta or Srila Prabhupada picked up Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's, that this concept of the instruction of the Guru becomes the life of the disciple. So he's not just a teacher, it's not just for a certain time, and life means that my whole life becomes molded by this. And when I'm talking about Guru, I'm talking about Diksha Guru and Shiksha Gurus. So of course one needs to know how to identify those, and preeminent of which is Srila Prabhupada, and how our life is actually molded by that. And that's a very sort of interesting concept. A mold is something you take something that has no shape, you just take earth, you just take mud, and then there's a mold. And that mold may be, well, right now, to my mind at this present moment, the mold that comes up is the mold that we put our burfi into, and mold the burfi. So first the burfi has no shape, but then you put it in the mold, and then they have different nice molds that assumes. So same thing, you just take something that's formless, that has no real beauty, and all of a sudden when you put it in this mold, it assumes, and of course it means it has to go in. I don't know if you've had experience, I have experience in terms of metals, pouring metals. Sometimes you can pour something, liquid metals into a mold, and it doesn't want to stay, or it crawls out, like mercury crawls out. So there are molds, particular mold, and what happens if someone doesn't want to be molded? But that's on a subtle level, that's what happens with those instructions. This instruction pushes me here, and that instruction pushes me there, and this instruction here, and that instruction there. And if we allow ourselves to become molded, then the end result will be either a gopi or a gopa. That will be the result of the mold. But if we don't, then tatadihantara prapti, then you can get another material body. If we follow our mind and we just continue letting our mind mold us, because of course that's what's happening, then we're being molded into another material body. So, yes, it's actually picking up the finer instructions, simply that it has equal weight in Krishna's eyes, it has equal weight, and especially as devotees become more advanced, they should, number one, be able to recognize instructions when they just come in passing, and then they should be taking it more and more seriously, realize the weight of this thing. So Lord Balaram is coming in, and this person sitting on the Vyasasana thinking, I'm somebody. In front of Lord Balaram, everybody is nobody. And now all of a sudden he's thinking, I'm somebody. The formality that once I've seated here, then it's not proper to offer respect, because really it's the Bhagavatam and everyone should be showing respect to the Bhagavatam. But here is the Bhagavatam. He's walking in person. So you should recognize that yes, to him I must offer respect. And otherwise, then the bad quality, then the past comes up and becomes a reality. Then you consider the past. So this morning as I was listening to Prabhupada's tape, this was again this thing, Prabhupada and the chain, Munayo Sadhu Ham Bhavadbir Loka Mangalam. What is this? Sadhu. Sadhu, it is proper. What is this? It is proper. Who has done this? And then Prabhupada just changing the actual translation of the Bhagavatam. And then Prabhupada starts, yes, it is that, and such person, it is because he was like this and he was like that. So, because he was willing to change, which Srila Prabhupada personally did, then Prabhupada referred to his past. Hare Krishna. More could be said. I'm sitting I'm the observer. I observe this. It's like a really wide spectrum of what it means to follow. It makes me very much aware of how careful I need to be to follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions. Very interesting. I had one direct order from Prabhupada, and I didn't follow it. That's when Prabhupada told me to come to India. But my GBC said, no, it's okay, it's not. Prabhupada didn't really mean that. What to do? I follow my GBC. We were trained like that. Even if Prabhupada says something, then, well, maybe you don't understand what he really meant. It sounded pretty clear because you said it a couple of times. So, it's making me relevant to, well, what are the other things that Prabhupada is instructing? And sometimes through dream, and of course through Prabhupada's instructions, and in other ways, what are the instructions that we get? And how closely do we want to follow? Because we want to be a mold. And some molds are very, very, very intricate. And ultimately, this mold has to be very intricate. So, for instance, gopis are very beautiful. They're like the most beautiful of women, and the gopas are also very beautiful. So that means it's very, very intricate mold. And of course, inside everything also has to be intricate. Okay, now, please tell us what are the, this is not part of the initiation, was what she sent her beads in. So, tell us what the regulative principles and vows are?
So, dear Radhashyam, dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Guru Maharaj, and dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. Today I swear that from this very moment I will never eat meat, fish and eggs, take any intoxications, gamble and engage in illicit sexual relationships. Also, I promise that I will chant at least 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra daily, properly and attentively, and also I will study Srila Prabhupada's books on the regular basis.
Okay, thank you. So your name is a name for Srimati Radharani, who's well, not very opulent. She's the most opulent person. She's opulent with many things. And I've never done this before. So your name is Aiśvarya Devī Dāsī. Someone should put on the Kantimala, and here is this. Yes, Aiśvarya. And dear devotees, Hare Krishna. That's it for now. Shri Shri Radha-shyama Sundar ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
Shri Shri Maharaj ki Jai.